Welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Activity at the fund market is regarded by many investors as one of the most prospective directions of investing. In comparison with the countries of Western Europe, for the last financial year, the stock market of Ukraine is characterized by significant growth. So what changes have occurred in the stock market that create even more favorable conditions for foreign investors, and what is the role of the depository system in the securities market? To talk more about this, we're joined in the studio today by Mindaugas Bakas. He is the head of Ukraine's National Depository. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So first of all, let's evaluate the whole stock market of Ukraine, because it is a comparatively young thing for Ukraine here. It appeared we could say that it appeared just recently. So how does it look right now?
Well, I mean, from external point of view, Ukrainian stock market is very volatile. And last year's statistics obviously proved that Ukrainian stock market in the world was one of the leaders in terms of growth. What
do you think were the factors that lead it up to Ukrainian stock market being one of the leaders in the growth?
What I wanted to say is that this is not necessarily a good thing. Because growth might be influenced by some not very good factors, and
like what?
Certain growth of assets that are not very attractive to investors, that are more technical growth rather than the actual investment value growth. So, in my personal opinion, this was the actual driver for Ukrainian market growth compared to a organic, investor-driven growth.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got from your answer is that Ukraine is not attractive enough for investors, but still its stock market is growing?
Well, if you look to the composition of the index, which is obviously the indicator of the market growth, then the number of good assets or company shares to invest into is not really kind of valuable or interesting to investors. So in terms of corporate instruments, there's a lot yet to do in Ukraine, and regulators have to lift the moratorium for adding new instruments to the market, increase the quality of these assets so that they actually become interesting to analyze rather than to follow the technical fluctuation. The other side of the story is that there is what is interesting is the corporate bonds market, i.e. the Ukrainian state instruments that are being issued locally and abroad. The yield is almost 20%, which is very high, and looking at the history, there are no fundamental problems of paying back this money from Ukraine. So in that respect, this is the actual point of interest for foreign investors. And there is a lot to be done so that these investors could more freely enter the market, where we as an part of the infrastructure, we come in.
For the investors to enter the market more freely, as you just said, you also mentioned that the government needs to apply or implement certain instruments. What kind of instruments are we talking about that are going to make Ukraine more attractive for the investors?
If your question is about new instruments, then obviously, first of all, this is the corporate market, i.e. the possibility for public companies to issue new shares via IPOs or SPOs on stock exchanges and make them tradable instruments that are driven by a good performance of these companies and certain news that are related with the business of these companies. So that's a very basic step that needs to be done. Right now, regulators are not accepting, to my understanding, new initiatives for companies to come into the stock market. So that needs to be lifted. Other types of instruments is derivatives, the commodities market, new money market instruments like banking deposit certificates. I mean, in Ukraine there is so much to be done that is working in all other markets that you can, pick any direction and you can copy paste into Ukraine and it should be working. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot to be done yet.
In your opinion, would you say that the not so effective previous privatization model that existed in Ukraine, is this the result of a not so happy stock market in Ukraine right now?
That is all about the quality, because you have both sides, i.e. the issuer and the shareholder, unhappy. Because the issuer is not happy because historically that issuer was forced, due to changes in the law, to come in that area of business, in the stock market. And it's not their goal to develop, to become more transparent, to care about their investors, i.e. shareholders. Therefore, they see it as a burden. Now, the shareholders usually, as a result of all this Soviet-style privatization, there is a few major shareholders and a huge amount of minority shareholders that own fractions of % of the company. These shareholders obviously do not receive any dividends. They cannot trade or sell the shares because there is no market, there is no interest. So it's all in all, it's lose-lose situation in a way. And this part needs to in one or another way, to shrink and squeeze out procedure, which was introduced, I think in 2017, is getting more and more momentum in the market. Last year, we saw quite a few procedures to be executed in depository system. So this thing will take some time, but it's the right direction that the market is going. The key thing that we need a new blood, as we say. A new blood is needed so that there will be new, fresh investors and new companies that are interested in staying in the market, being public. So that's the development that needs to be fueled by necessary regulation changes and regulators' decisions.
All right. Let's talk about the depository system for a little while. What is the role of the stock market in the depository system?
Or vice versa. Yeah, I mean, depository is the foundation of the stock market. Depository is the place where the
so it's
securities,
a platform, so-called platform?
Well, it is a platform for registering all the securities that are in the market. Okay. And also transferring the ownership information to the level of the stock exchange, so that stock exchanges or the brokers in the stock exchanges could start trading those securities. So it's like a central bank for securities. Okay. So in that respect, our capabilities, our trustworthiness becomes very important. Because if the market participants do not trust the infrastructure, then they're afraid to try something new. They're afraid to create new instruments, products, and expand their businesses because of unpredictability. And this is the area where we, as a Central Depository or National Depository of Ukraine, we are investing a lot to increase that trust.
Except for the goal of increasing the trust of investors in Ukraine's stock market, what are the other goals of the depository system?
We also try to be drivers for changes. We understand that exchanges, as we have right now in Ukrainian market, they have their own problems, and they are not very proactive. The other layer, the clearing function, which is monopolized right now by the law in the commercial bank owned by the National Bank called Settlement Center, they are also not proactive. They also are solving whatever their own problems. So we are taking this flag of innovations, and we create some changes to the laws. We initiate some discussions with the market participants. A good example is nominee concept that increases the ease of access of the market from the foreign investors, or the banking deposit certificates that we have been closely working with the National Bank and the Ukrainian banking community to create an instrument that could be easily created by the commercial banks and even traded on a stock exchange. So we want to be drivers for changes, drivers for innovation.
In June 2018, the National Depository of Ukraine signed a contract for the development of a new software for the depository system of the stock market with the British company Percival Software Limited. How is that going?
Going well. We are on track. In the end of November, we received the first delivery, as we call it. So this is the platform which we are right now almost day and night testing and checking and improving. So that for the second delivery that will contain full functionality that we need, which will happen in April, we will be already ready to onboard our participants for more wide testing. The planned launch is in August 5th. It's a tight schedule. Obviously, all employees are a bit stressed, which in my personal opinion is a bit good, because stress makes mobilize some resources.
Makes people more concentrated.
Yes. So as of now, we are on track. We keep a very close contact with our participants, with the regulator. Because we want to be maximum transparent in this process, we created working groups. We initiating meetings so that people are informed what's happening. Therefore, we see it as a major activity this year for us.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for this fruitful conversation.
Thank you.
That was Mindaugas Bakas. He is the head of Ukraine's National Depository. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV for more.